Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Behind the Tech. On this one, we talk with Kimberly McGuire from Bitcraze, and she speaks about the importance of a reliable development platform as an enabler for the robotics industry.
You have a talk on Friday.
Yes, I have.
On ROSCon. What is it about?
It's about the drone that Bitcraze makes, the Crazyflie, and our current efforts of integrating it with ROS2. We have this very nice community member that got kind of us in the ROS in the first place, called Wolfgang Heunig.
Mm-hmm.
He made a project that's called Crazy Swarm, and that was a ROS1 based project that he kind of made just to fly massive swarms, let's say.
Yeah. So you got bunch of Crazyflies swarming together. How many? Is there a limit or?
Yeah, there's definitely, well, in that sense was a communication limit,
Mm-hmm.
because they also had to use motion capture. So in the end, you have to stream that all of those positions back to the drones itself. So you have definitely communication for, bandwidth problem, let's say.
Yeah.
But they flew up to 49 Crazyflies at the same time.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's enough to make a lot of useful things.
Yeah, they mostly did also for trajectory control and the avoidance of each other as well. They did a lot of very nice research based on that project.
Oh, so
And
are they locally avoiding themselves, or is that whoever's orchestrating this calculating for them?
it's, I think, how it went at the start. They would first calculate the trajectory, so that you will have a whole bunch of positions of the Crazyflies that you would put through some kind of optimizer, and it would calculate all kinds of trajectories. Then they would upload those trajectories on board of the Crazyflies, and then they would say, okay, take off and start the trajectory all simultaneously. So, but in work afterwards, they were actually doing it in real time, still with a central computer though, so no peer-to-peer communication.
Yeah.
But it was all going through this Crazy Swarm ROS1 node at that time. So that was kind of the start, and that already started about 5-6 years ago. And ROS1 is going to disappear.
Yeah.
And I became
knock on wood sometime soon. So.
Yeah, so 2025, but I think you can only use it on 2004 Ubuntu.
Yep.
So that makes it already quite difficult.
Yeah.
And I also kind of started to get interested again in ROS.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm helping him out and
With
making
the
that.
talk. So he ported the library to ROS2. And
Yes.
that's what the talk is about.
Exactly, and I have helped him also with a big portion of writing the code for it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because it makes more sense also for Bitcraze to become more involved in it,
Mm-hmm.
because half of our users are using ROS through this project.
Yeah.
And before that, Bitcraze was not really maintaining it, maybe giving some support, but not actually actively helping out with maintaining it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the last half year, I've actually done that.
Mm-hmm.
He already did the initial work, and then I helped on top of that. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here, but luckily I am.
Yeah.
So I'm also giving the talk on behalf of him as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So in your journey to port to ROS2, were there any challenges?
Well, not that much, I would say. I guess like Wolfgang would be able to answer that question more properly, because he had to really start.
So he started the project and he
Yeah,
actually
exactly.
probably dealt with those initial problems.
Yeah, exactly. I think he already started for a year, and there are maybe a couple of issues. For instance, that you can do like symlink builds, so that you don't have to constantly build your entire project in order to have the changes be active. That works for CMake, but not for the Python setup.py. So that's something that I constantly have to kind of struggle with. But for me, it was pretty okay, because before that I was a beta tester for a ROS2 course. I think it is called Build Mobile Robots with ROS2. It's from Matt Sadowski from Weekly Robotics,
Yeah.
so I was a beta tester for that, and I thought it was a great opportunity to relearn ROS again.
Let's say hi to Matt. Hi, Matt.
Hello. Yes, I only saw him online though, but yeah, and that was actually kind of like the starting point, and because that was so fresh in my mind, it went actually quite easy, and I wrote, I think, 1,000 lines of code in just a matter of weeks for it. So it was quite tough weeks, but it was a lot of fun.
I feel like it has to be fun for us to be working in robotics right now. Like that's the number one thing I keep hearing people say. It's just like, I do it because it's fun. And then the rest is just like the cherry on top, which is rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what would you say are the skill sets that you had to build or acquire in order to join the ROS community?
Yes, well, you definitely need a basic set of skills for programming. That's for sure. It doesn't have to be the best programmer. Let's say, like you could, for instance, do kind of like the conceptualization of it, and somebody else can check it for you.
Yeah, I do feel like a lot of people get stuck into like, oh, I want to be the expert. I want to be the know-it-all. But like, as long as you can figure yourself how you do it and like actually follows the steps, you should be fine. Like, it's not about being the smartest programmer.
No, yeah. It's just, I think, about conceptualizing and abstracting, for instance, to start small and just add some small steps and constantly be able to figure out what the next feature is. So if you work with Git, definitely also a very important skill to have, then just make sure that your commits are relatively small and actually mean something. So that kind of helps from a programming side of things.
Yeah.
In general, I would say, yeah, ROS kind of makes it easy to be kind of versatile. Either you can be very focused on one thing within the node, or you can be more the expert of the total system. That you kind of know which nodes are necessary and perhaps aren't really an expert on each individual node, but you know how everything fits together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so which sensors do you need to do SLAM, or like what else do you need to make an autonomous robot, for instance?
Where's the data I'm getting to, and what's the actuators I need to control?
Yeah, exactly. And perhaps you don't know exactly how to write a embedded driver from scratch, but at least you know where to look for.
Exactly.
And that is kind of, I think, more of the roboticist that I am. Is more of like, the ones that connect the dots together. If I need to be a temporary expert in something, then I just have to kind of really look into it. But yeah, and that's kind of completely up to the person what they want to be, because everybody has different interests.
Yeah, will you say that a modern roboticist needs to wear many hats and have like a broader skill set, or would you think that you need to specialize really to shine or have a real career path in robotics?
That is actually
And then I feel weird saying this to a doctor, asking this to a doctor. So, what do you think is more true? Which of the statements? You have to specialize, or you just need to be able to adapt?
I think adaptation is very important. Okay. Although it's like I'm a doctor, I should be a specialist in something. Yeah. But my specialization is robotics, which means that I'm kind of a jack of all trades still, even if I've done my PhD. Yeah, it was actually quite interesting a few years ago when I was applying for jobs after my PhD. I actually found out that I'm too much of a jack of trades. Because at that time, people were still looking at for a lot of, people with expertise, specialists. Even though I had a lot of experience with many things, perhaps I wasn't an expert at all of them at the same time.
You want more tea?
Of course, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, but then at that time it was still a bit of not seen as a strength, but more of as a weakness. But I don't know, like it's for a robotic system. You kind of need to know the full picture, right?
Yeah,
in order
I kind of wonder if they were trying to solve a specific problem by hiring someone that could just come and fix it immediately. And that's why they were really looking for someone that's specialized in that area.
Well, the funny thing is that they were actually looking for somebody that can look at the system. But they still wanted you to be a complete expert at all of these elements.
So it's more like a broken interview process?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, indeed. So, but in the end, I think actually when I came to Bitcraze, that was actually the perfect match at that point because they were because it's also a small company. It's really an asset to have multiple skills as well, not only in being a roboticist, but just in running a company.
Yeah.
So I would be able to, like, if one of my colleagues that does sales or marketing for a while, I'll be able to take that over for a bit or things like that. So you kind of touch a lot of parts of what it means to run a business, from making prototypes into the actual selling
product.
part.
How many people are working with you in Bitcraze?
Currently we have 6.
Okay.
We are looking for new people, but until now we have not been crazy busy yet. So so 6 people in total.
And so you came into robotics in the industry, and you were like specializing in a lot of things. Well, not specializing, sorry. You're like jack of all trades, and you jump into the opportunity at Bitcraze. How did you apply that knowledge? Like, what are you doing right now?
So currently, all I can think about is ROS. I've been dreaming it because I've been working so hard on it. For me, actually, because when I did my PhD specifically on MAVs, which is also a very complex system, and robots in 3D is more difficult, of course. So I already came across the Crazyflie. I already had experience with the Crazyflie, so that was at least a good experience that they can use. Also, I used to be one of the users. I used to be a researcher that uses the Crazyflie because that's kind of the most people that buy our products or the Crazyflie are researchers.
You went through the pains.
Yeah, I went through the pains and I want to fix it.
Yeah.
So at least I could be kind of like the glue between the research community and Bitcraze, because so it's mostly software engineers, and they are very good programmers, very good hardware designers, way better than I can ever be. But but I actually have also been at the other side, so that at least I can make some help with that.
Oh, and that's really important. That's really important. So you know how to fly well.
No, I know how to make them fly.
I don't know how to fly well either.
Yeah, I'm a really bad pilot. But I make during my PhD research, I made them fly autonomously. So that is, so that I didn't have to fly them.
That's my answer actually. When people ask me, so you know how to fly drones well? Well, I can program it to fly. I probably can pilot it myself.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to get yourself out of a situation like that. But tell me more about the skill set that you think people have or need to get into the robotics industry right now.
Yeah, indeed. So programming I already mentioned, although Python should be already sufficient. I would say...
So not even like C++ or anything, just like basic...
Python would be already enough for most systems. You would have, I think it's very important to have a good feel for the systems as well. You need to have basic knowledge about sensors and state estimators, controllers, things like that. So
that's the area where I lack the most.
Yeah, so because a robot is, of course, a sensing and actuator, acts something to the environment, and that is something that the sensors act. So you need to know a bit about each element of that process in order to understand robotics. Yeah, and other than that,
as easy as that. Just being able to understand all the concepts. No, I think you're touching on a great point. Like, you have to be able to adapt to the next challenge and be able to be curious enough to move around and figure out why things are working the way they are. I feel like people forget that these things are basically a lot of code glued together, a lot of different components that are working together and orchestrating things. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today was to give the PX4 community sort of like a window into another company that is also working in drones, but has very different goals than what the majority of the companies that we work with in the industry. I feel like we work with a lot of companies that are doing really big drones, or drones that are like doing cargo, or like even moving people. And at the end of the day, they're robots as well. And I feel like our community needs to have a bigger understanding of what's going on outside our bubble, and so that we can learn more from the robotics industry, and hopefully the robotics industry can learn more from the drone industry as well. I like the Crazyflie a lot, and I know that there was a recent contribution, and you were involved in this, right, to get it to work on PX4 with PX4, or were you not involved in this? Who was involved?
I think that was actually before that, but that must be my colleague Tobias.
Tobias, yes, it was Tobias, yes. And for a while it used to work well, but I don't know if there's not enough users that complain that it is not working, it's broken, or what's happening there. And I don't mean to jump into a discussion of why it doesn't or why it does, but what I want to get to is the fact that just by having an open source solution, you can just port another solution on top.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to adapt things to work in a different scenario. Because at the end of the day, they're just bots. Like, they have sort of like the same sensor set, or maybe different brands, maybe different capabilities, but an IMU is going to be an IMU. And you need to be able to understand those things, like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think the robotics industry needs to do to get to the next level? Maybe that could be in autonomy, maybe that could be in like just reaching more commercial adoption. What do you think is missing right now from the robotics industry?
Do you mean from a flying robotics industry?
No, in
or
general.
Just in general?
Just in general.
Ooh. Yeah, I gotta think about that, because now that I start to get into ROS2 again, I kind of
You start saying
I step back into the actual robotics, like robotics world again, because that has been almost 7-8 years ago.
You know, the like, and this happens to me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm in my bubble, like I said, and I work in my things, and when I take a step outside that comfort zone, it's just like a brand new world. And this is what I'm doing here at ROSCon. Like, I'm just going and talking to people and to learn, so that I can take it back to our community. So in this case, do you think like flying robots within the ROS community are the majority of bots, or do you think there's like a huge collection of other different bots that are like leading the way instead of the flying ones?
For the ROS community, I would say it's mostly the driving mobile robots that are more of leading the way. And then it's always because it's so much more difficult to actually fly, and like, no offense to mobile
gravity
people, but it's because I think especially quadcopters, that is a unstable platform. So you have to think about so many more layers of security and with people around, the propeller blades, and a mobile robot, of course. Yeah, okay, it can crash into people if it's a big driving robot. Yeah, it can pretty much hurt, but and of course the big industrial robots like who make cars, that's of course also another issue. But when driving robots, if they stand still, they stand still.
So they're more predictable.
Yeah, they're more predictable, and I think at least from a flying robotics point of view, safety is still quite sometimes also a big concern when I talk.
My fingers have touched many propellers many times.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like a witness of how safe you need to be with them.
Yeah, it's I guess there's still a reason that perhaps that's the trust needs to be a bit bigger, and that can only be held for at least for flying robots to make them so safe that people don't even have to worry about them anymore. So And I think there have been too many examples of drone flights going wrong. So we have to have less of that.
Yeah.
So that is at least for flying robots. For robotics in general, what I kind of noticed when I now am following ROSCon as well is that there's a lot of nice tools that are being in industry or are being proven right now. But it also kind of feels that there's a lot of techniques that also existed when I last did ROSCon like 7-8 years ago.
Yeah.
So it seems that it's not really, sorry to say, not evolving that much. There should be more cooler techniques. There are so many research out there done by academia. So I expect it to have more advanced. But then you of course have the safety issues. Like, if you use SLAM algorithms or navigation algorithms that have been proven time and time again, those are, of course you want to use those if they work properly enough. But when I talk to most people that attend ROSCon, nobody goes to ROS afterwards. Because that is more academia. But
that's where the research is.
Yeah, exactly. So
and that's the whole reason for ROSCon being next to ROS, right?
Yeah. But everybody that I talked to today, I think none of them are planning to come to ROS the next week. So, and that's really too bad, because I think, yes, it is important to make sure that the techniques that are currently out there are tested enough, are safe enough in order to make sure that no accident happen. But it would be nice to also try out something new as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like the value that new research gives, I don't think it's very implicitly laid out there for businesses to understand that, okay, yes, you're going to ROSCon, they see it more like training maybe, and like, okay, I'm investing in my team to go and train themselves and learn more. But when you get it out more into like the research side of things, it becomes harder sell, right? So maybe we need to invest more into showing people what the benefits are, so that they are more clear and like people have more opportunities to attend those events.
Yeah, there has to be some kind of way to close the gap somehow. Perhaps there needs to be one conference in between. But it's so I guess that would be nice if that would improve a bit. Especially for me, it's important because I'm also from the academic world and I've spent 3 years in industry, but still like with a foot in academia because we work with a lot of researchers. And at Bitcraze we have kind of a luxury position. We don't have very big drones that if they fall and break, everything...
Yeah, you sort of fly under the regulation because the regulation doesn't really apply to you in most cases.
No, yeah. I'm not sure, outside, of course, there's more regulation, but indoors for such small drones...
Most places, quote, because it's there's a lot of different laws all over the world, so don't get me wrong, go check out the laws in your country before flying.
Yes, please. But it's... at least it makes it... You have also kind of a certain type of freedom. And that's perhaps what researchers are also kind of looking for, is that you come up with an idea in the morning and you try it out in the afternoon on an actual drone or a couple of drones. Yeah. And that's kind of really heightens the creativity process. Yeah. We have at Bitcraze we have every Friday we have Fun Fridays. So that's kind of a day that you just do kind of whatever you want, as long as it's still Bitcraze related, but just kind of to develop your skills or just try something cool out. And then...
What was the last thing you did?
Last thing is that we got the Steam Deck.
Oh yes, I saw that.
Yeah, and then I actually installed the Crazyflie client on there, and I was able to fly you saw the video indeed.
I saw the video.
The flapper,
there's video out there.
Yeah. So there's the Flapping Wing AMAV that we got from Flapper Drones, and that actually runs a Crazyflie Bolt Autopilot on there. So I was able to control it from there.
Great.
Which was really cool.
So your platform adapted into a different frame type, I guess. It's just like flying differently.
Yeah.
With the same hardware.
It's the same hardware. It's actually currently also merged with Master officially, this platform, because it has been kind of branched off first, but because it needed to be able to also support some actuators as well. So not only motors, so it was a little bit more complicated, but it's now in the latest development branch. I found also a couple of very nice papers lately about people just took off the motors of the Crazyflie and just added a couple of wings and just made a monocopter out of it.
Nice.
Yeah, so there was, I think, even one science robotics publication for that. So that's really cool.
It's always really cool when you see your things out there being used in different ways that you never imagined.
Yeah, I definitely saw that at ICRA, which is the other big robotics conference.
That was in Boston this year, right?
Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Yes, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So
I keep getting things wrong. Thank you for correcting me.
So it was, I think about 5-6 papers actually did something completely different with the Crazyflie. So yeah, it's really nice to see that. I guess what I've heard, I've talked to a couple of the authors, and they said since our firmware is kind of made for one quadcopter, for them it was very easy to change.
Yeah.
It's even being written in C and being in embedded, it was still very easy to kind of adapt it to their use case at that point. So, but yeah.
What do you think is the most valuable thing about the Crazyflie platform?
I would say it being so small.
Being like just a small
and versatility. I would
versatility.
say. Yeah. For me, when I was doing my PhD research at the TU Delft MAV lab, I first started with a smaller drone that was already part of the lab. It was developed in house. It was a great drone. It was definitely, how do you call it, like one of my darlings, let's say, because I worked on it for 3 years and soldered everything, and every time it would crash.
How many times did it crash?
So many times, don't tell people. And the problem is that as soon as it crashed, it would break.
Yeah.
And I would spend 2 hours of soldering. And at one point I was almost at the end of my PhD, going into my 4th year. It's like I need to have a swarm of autonomous exploring pocket drones.
Yep.
And I only managed to fly up with 2, and I was still a safety pilot looking at it very scarily.
Yeah, especially since you had to resolder the whole thing.
Yeah, you definitely don't want them to crash. But then somebody actually told me, like, hey, have you heard about the Crazyflie? Because at that point I need to have something that was able to fly with optical flow deck. Something that was able to sense distances to the walls, the multi-ranger check. I was like, oh, they actually caught up with me.
Yeah.
So actually last year I just killed my darlings and I switched completely to the Crazyflie, and I ended up being able to actually make it to my goal of my PhD, which I didn't think about it like at the end of my 3rd year.
So just the right platform allow you to develop much faster.
Yes, absolutely. Especially if you're flying, if you need to do any research with a swarm. You don't want the entire swarm to be soldered together.
Yeah. Oh, it's just impossible if you're dealing with the problem of the hardware plus the swarms.
Yeah, exactly. It's completely. Yeah, it's completely impossible. Let's say. And
for
the
a one-person team, yes.
Yes. And the Crazyflie, it can crash so many times. It will still work. You might need to change propeller or 2, or maybe motor or 2, but that's it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's pretty much it.
It's also accessible enough so that if maybe you really damaged it, you can just buy a new one.
Yeah, exactly. It's you don't want to do that too often. Of course, you have a budget as a PhD student, but they weren't. It's like they're about now currently 240, or with a flow deck together, $240. I think.
Yeah, the prices will probably appear on the screen somewhere here.
I'm not sure, like, with the current inflation and how they currently is, but at least it's not a bigger robot of like $100,000 or something.
Yeah.
Where you only have one off, so that's kind of, it makes them a bit more dispensable. But yeah,
it's a challenge.
I still cared about them, each one of them, but
I think you name them individually.
Yeah. And I think it's also, at that time, just the fact that they were able to fly and fly stilly, like hover.
Yeah.
And that they were able to react sort of less stably to any velocity commands was just, that's all I needed at that point.
That's great. And so now you are working at Bitcraze, and recently you've been working with ROS. Do you think that if you had the opportunity to work on your PhD with the tool sets that are available now, would that have maybe help you even more, or develop it more faster, or have access to different packages out there that might have helped you?
I'm not necessarily sure about ROS, because for my thesis specifically, everything had to be on board. So they had to have onboard peer-to-peer communication. They had to be fully autonomous. So at that point, micro ROS wasn't that much developed, and I think that's also kind of like a top layer and not the actual control of it. I don't think it will be possible to do that fully with ROS right now, especially on like one of the microprocessors are STM32F4s.
You're running on F4s. Yeah, it's highly limited.
Yeah, exactly. So, but still, perhaps it would have been maybe a bit easier to debug. At least if I would have started with the Crazyflie, that was already a big help. But at least being able to maybe use that Crazy Swarm ROS1 package, that would have helped a lot. I think then it would have been more difficult because more people would have already started working on it as well. So probably would have had more of like the breath in my neck, and would have been maybe a bit more stressful.
You're actually touching on a good point. In your case, it's like more like having people observing what you're doing. But do you think that by having this tool like ROS to enable and this platform, are you expecting more people to be able to try it as well? Like, here's another valid option for rapid prototyping and development.
I hope so.
Is that your goal behind this?
Also, I would like to present the Crazyflie also as an actual robot. It's a robot. It can actually do things. So in my talk, I'm actually going to show that you're able to scan a room, for instance, with the multi-ranger, and navigate in that with using packages that were actually meant for just 2D mobile robots. Yeah. So to kind of show that, and you can actually do that as well. It's not as well than a 360 LiDAR. Those are still too heavy. Yeah. But you can. And expensive. But you can still, yes, definitely. But at least you can do something with it. Like either you can have an entire swarm that at one point a central computer can merge a map together, or you can perhaps use it to teach students about robotics, just the basics. Yeah. Because for the basics you might not need a $10,000 robot for that. So yeah.
Speaking of those $10,000 drones.
Or robots.
Or robots.
Or yeah.
How do you think one of the benefits of having ROS 2 as an option for Crazyflie is that maybe once you're done with your prototype or your research, if you want to take this into actual production in a vehicle that it may be different size or different capabilities, do you think you can take some of what you did and port it into the new stuff? And would that be helpful? Or would that be one of the new futures of what you're doing?
We're currently not planning that right now. So first we just have to get the package out there and release it in the first place. But hopefully it will be easier to connect different types of platforms, either driving ones or bigger drones, through the ROS 2 network. So that should be easier for sure. What I'm also hoping that we'll have released out soon is to be able to switch between different simulators as well. Like even though the Crazyflie is quite safe, if you have a 50 flying, you kind of want to know what you're doing. Yes. And that's like more especially that holds for bigger drones as well. And I can also remember I had a talk with somebody at another conference who was actually using both PX4 drones and Crazyflies, and they were actually doing the exact what you were saying. Like they were trying out their ideas on the Crazyflie first, and then they want to try it out on bigger drones for outdoor flight. But that was very difficult because they're not compatible.
Yeah.
So you definitely see a need of people. Perhaps simulation is not completely enough in order to. Maybe they want to have something flying, albeit smaller, before they actually want to port it to a bigger one.
Yeah, being able to fast prototype in one platform and take it to another seamlessly would be the dream, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That's actually one of the reasons why I approached you, because there's a lot of need in our community too for a platform like that. I think having something that is accessible as the Crazyflie would be a great idea, especially since it already at one point was running PX4 well. So maybe in the future we can work together to create that in the future iteration. So I want to start wrapping up the episode, and I want to ask you a few questions, like more like rapid question, you answer whatever comes to your mind. So what is one thing that you think that Bitcraze does better than anyone else?
Having fun.
That's good. That's always good. How do you have fun with Bitcraze?
Well, it's kind of our company philosophy. It's we don't want to let our development be led by external deadlines, or like we also don't have any funding, so we don't have any company to have deadlines for or to show something for. It always, actually all of our products come from Fun Fridays. Come from a moment that somebody's like, oh, this is a really interesting technology. Let's try something. Let's make a deck. And then at one point, after a couple of Fun Fridays, hey, maybe we can actually turn this into a product or a new deck for the Crazyflie. And that's kind of how it all started. And
experimenting, having fun.
Yeah. So all the products are created by interest and fun and geekiness, let's say. So the lighthouse positioning system, the one that we have based on the Steam VR virtual reality base stations. That is kind of based on the fact that Arno is a very vivid virtual reality gamer. So so that's kind of like where it came from, and then just out of interest and just the coolness of it. These products are created.
Sounds like a great place to work with.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So next question is, in terms of sensors for drones, what do you think is like the next big milestone? What type of sensors would you like to see more approachable maybe, or better capabilities?
I would actually want to say better batteries, but
no, that's a completely valid answer. To be honest.
It's nice to have nice sensors, but it's if you're not able to run it for a long time, that's difficult. There's a couple of things that are really coming out. I would say like alternative ways, alternative cameras, event cameras. Although those are probably quite some years before they can actually fit on a Crazyflie. We've seen some really cool work of ETH Zurich doing things with like a multi-zone TOF sensor. You should check those videos out. I can send you a couple of links.
I'm subscribed to their channel.
So they had a Crazyflie with one of those multi-zone TOF sensors, and it just flew through an entire room of people, fully dense with people, and avoided all of them. It's like that was the most autonomous.
How brave of them to be there.
It's the most autonomous Crazyflie that I've seen so far. I think like these alternative like camera sensing, and then we're hoping also we have the AI deck that already has like a chip to do some neural networks on there. Hope to upgrade that as well. We still need batteries to power it all. So let's have some better batteries.
You know what I also would like to see in batteries? Better supplies around, because I feel like wherever you are in the world, it's a different situation how to get batteries because of the limitations. Just purchasing a battery is kind of hard sometimes too, especially for drones. So, what do you think is the best thing about ROSCon? And I know it's your first time.
Yeah, it's also ROSCon hasn't even officially started yet, so.
Well,
I think
I sort of did this morning with the workshops.
Yeah, kind of indeed. So
Yeah.
there's already like a pre-flavor of it. I like the people so far. They have this app that you install, and I was the where you can create meetups and things like that. And I was amazed how active people were.
Yeah, it usually doesn't work at any other conference. Like,
No.
it's like people don't really talk to each other, and I was so surprised. We were hosting a meetup together,
Yeah, exactly.
and I mean, people just signed up for that. How? Like, okay.
Yeah, I haven't checked, but last was 24 people.
Yeah. So, and this is later today, right?
Yeah,
I forgot.
exactly.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll make it.
Yeah, I think we just have to squeeze in a bit, if that's okay to the restaurant owners. But no, I was amazed like how active people were, and not only like the people that are maybe just the PhD students or just the regular engineers, also the CTOs, the CEOs.
I know. And
Yeah?
then the event is also sold out.
Yeah, exactly. So I remember for ROS a couple of years ago, there was also some kind of app, and of course during Corona, and I was there on the online meet event, and there was nobody there. So this was like actually what it should have been, but now I guess people have more incentive to also talk to each other because we can actually meet now. But I like it so far. Let's see if I still feel like that in
I know.
2 days.
Let's catch up and see. One last question is, what do you feel people should know about Dr. Kimberly McGuire?
Ooh, what people should know.
One thing that you think people really should know about you, and it could be anything from fun to work to serious talk.
I guess I would say it's very important for definitely for somebody that's in the academic field that it doesn't matter if you're a doctor in anything. There's something called the imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And I sometimes have a lot of trouble with that. So if somebody comes to me, it's like, okay, Kimberly, I'm so fan of your work. You're amazing. It's like, no.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about clearly.
Have you seen my code? Don't look at my code. No, yeah. So I have a pretty bad case of the imposter syndrome, but I'm working on it. It doesn't. But on the other hand, it also makes me work harder as well. It has a benefit. If I actually think I'm amazing already, then maybe I wouldn't work so hard.
Yeah. Well, I can relate a bit about having imposter syndrome as well. I can tell that you're a really smart woman and really capable. So I want to, first of all, thank you for being in the podcast and thank you for sharing all that. I feel it's important to meet the persons behind the technologies that we see out there and get to know their stories and know how they got here and the road still ahead of them. So thank you again for your time in the podcast, and I had a wonderful time. I hope that your rest of your journey in ROSCon is as good as it has been so far. And let's see after a few days. All right. Well, thank you again, and goodbye, everyone.